I was driving down La Cienega here in LA yesterday, and I saw this billboard, and I tweeted it out because I could not believe it. Let's take a look. Okay, this is in the middle of LA, like the heart of LA. To all our atheist friends, thank God you're wrong. AnswersInGenesis.org. Now, I tweeted it out, and I tagged you, and you retweeted it, and then a zillion people retweeted it. And then I started doing a little more research on it. Turns out this is not just in LA, this thing. There is a massive digital billboard for it in Times Square right now. Okay, there's obviously no audio there because it's a digital billboard in the middle of Times Square. So the guy who created this thing is Ken Ham, and you may know Ken Ham because he is the guy that started the Creation Museum in Kentucky. What's the Creation Museum? Well, we've got a picture from there too. Yeah, that's what appears to be a caveman or a cave boy, and he's playing with a dinosaur.
Enjoying the smell from behind the dinosaur, apparently.
Yeah, this is the dinosaur fart exhibit is what you're looking at there. Okay, so we got a lot here to work with. Now, just first off, let's just look at the billboard for a second. It actually struck me as offensive. It's really hard to offend me. I'm a comedian. I believe in free speech. The guy can do whatever he wants. But I just kept thinking as I was watching that, if you had said, hey, Jews, hey, Muslims, thank God you're wrong, people would be up in arms. But it seems to me you're still allowed to attack atheists.
I think that, I think fundamentally, and I could be wrong about this, but that billboard was a direct response to an atheist movement billboard that was also posted. I can't remember what the atheist movement billboard said, but it was something about being inclusive and, you know, atheism is not horrible. And then this response came up that was, I think, tongue-in-cheek. I mean, it's obviously tongue-in-cheek, but it's like, it's sharp and biting, but also kind of nice. Like all of my, you know, Christian friends in Texas, they're so kind when they deliver those biting words.
Atheist, I'll pray for you.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I don't know. I mean, it doesn't offend me. Maybe it's because I'm just so cynical about it at this point, and I've developed such a thick skin. But yeah, I mean, like you said, you're a defender of free speech.
Right. Okay, so I'm not saying that he can't do it. Really, I'm not. You can do whatever you want, say whatever you want. But really, had it been, oh, hey, Jews, hey, Muslims, thank God you're wrong, wouldn't people be going bonkers?
I have a twinge of that every time I see any religious advertisement.
Anyway.
But to my mind, it simply proves how misguided organized religion is to begin with.
Yeah.
Because if you genuinely believe that there is an all-knowing, all-powerful deity that created the world and is so ego-driven that it needs everybody to speak its name in the right way in order for it to grant them whatever they think they're going to be granted, does it really need a marketing department?
And that's,
right.
I mean,
he seems very insecure, that guy.
Fundamentally, that's a very good point. I think what this billboard really goes to show is how incredibly threatened Ken Ham feels by this new kind of organized. We're starting to see more organization within the atheist movement. And so when you have organizations like American Atheists or like the Richard Dawkins Foundation, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, whatever, and they actually are doing kind of billboards of their own, or they're starting to get people together to get out the message, and all of a sudden Ken Ham says, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know, are people going to buy into this? I got to do something about it. That shows that he thinks that this is a legitimate movement, and he thinks that that it's got power.
Yeah. So are atheists actually coming out of the closet now, so to speak? Because last time you were on the show, we did a thing about how Barney Frank, who was openly gay in Congress for 25 years, he had to wait, or seemingly had to wait, until he retired to finally announce that he was an atheist. So is there an actual movement, and do they see it as a threat?
I think it's starting to happen. I think the internet, in many ways, has freed up people to express their true selves in ways that they couldn't before. People with odd fetishes, people with outside of the mainstream religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs, people who have had thoughts that made them feel entirely isolated and alone in a world that presented religion, particularly our nation, presented religion as the norm. And a very particular puritanical kind of religion as the norm, found out that they were not alone in the world, and they immediately begin communicating and wanting to organize and get together and tweet up as twere.
Yeah.
Tweet up as twere.
As it were.
But I think one of the fundamental issues with a conversation about there being an atheist movement is that at its core, atheism is a lack of belief in a higher power. So I always try to make the distinction when I talk to people about my own atheism that it's not that I believe there is no God, it's that I simply don't believe in a God. And when you have a lot of different people who simply don't believe that there's a higher power that exists, there's nothing fundamental banding them together. There's no tenets of atheism, there's no mantra, there's no church that we go to. And so because of that, talking about an atheist movement, I think makes more sense in when we reference maybe a secular movement, a group of individuals who understand that we want to protect the First Amendment, that we want to keep church and state separate, that we want to make sure that religious interests aren't impeding on our own rights as individuals, infringing on our own rights, and that, you know, a secular nation from a governing perspective is a nation that we need to uphold. It's not really about getting an atheist agenda.
So here's how difficult it is for us to bond together. I actually disagree. I go the other way on atheism. It's not that I don't believe in a God. I believe there is no God. I believe that all of that is goofy, superstitious mythology, and that people do believe it is baffling to me. And part of the difficulty we have is that the democracy as we practice it comes, and more importantly, capitalism as we practice it, comes out of a feudal society. And the feudal society that it comes out of was a religious feudal society where the leaders were anointed by God. And we have not fully evolved beyond that as a nation. We still require certainly on the right, they require their candidates to say, God told me to run. And on the left, they require their candidates to still say, I believe in God.
To still say, I get Bible verses on my BlackBerry every morning.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. There's this sort of nod toward religion in the fundamental actions of our democracy as it stands right now, of our political process. Yeah. And I think that we do have to be active as atheists and as a secular community to make certain that we continue to move farther and farther away from feudalism, not back toward it.
Okay, so final thought on this. Then how do you, if you have two atheists here who sort of believe in a slightly different version of what that means to you personally, how do you gin up the base then? Because because it's so easy to do for the religious people, right? And it's so easy to do for the diehard partisan hacks on both sides. How do you gin up a base of rational people, secular people?
There are atheists who don't think we should. There are many atheists who think that this is not a movement and this is not a group of people that should be banded together. There are other atheists who do think that there should. I just spoke last weekend at the CFI conference or the CFI summit in Tacoma.
You get all the good gigs.
I spoke earlier this year at American Atheists, and there are humanist societies, free thinker societies, skeptic societies where I often visit, and it takes all kinds. And so I think fundamentally, again, if you want to rally a base and you want to have an organized movement, that movement needs to be a political movement. It's not going to be a religious movement because there's a lack of religion here that's fundamental to being an atheist.
Yeah. Dylan, bring this thing home.
I think if you want to support the idea of a secular society and a secular nation, the way to do it is by supporting the sciences, by supporting education, by supporting anything that promotes the arts, supporting anything that promotes free thinking and critical thinking and the expansion of the intellect and the mind.
Hey guys, the Rubin Report's brought to you by Coupaw.com. They have up to 75% off pet treats, chews, toys, and more. And if you use code RR, you can get another 20%. That's a lot of percentage right there. I can't do that kind of math. The link is right down below, Coupaw.com, code RR.